Thank you all for tuning in. The following is a presentation of Bald Spots Productions. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Subscribe, follow, whatever it is you've got to do to kick that algorithm into gear and help us reach more people. Yes, it is I, your humble host, Bill Hatch the Third, coming to you live from the palatial home studios of Bald Spots Productions here in the beautiful city of Malden, Missouri. Joining me from a more than acceptable safe social distance is my guest for today, Dr. Peter
Zafirides.
Zafirides. Oh, I got it. I got it right. So close in the pre-show. Zafirides.
Perfect. Oh gosh.
Oh, not quite as bad as the Hawaiian gentleman. I had to figure out how to say his name last night. I never did find out how to pronounce his last name. That was where all the vowels were.
Yeah, I've got plenty of consonants, that's for sure.
Yep. So how are you doing today? How are you feeling?
I'm doing well, Bill. I'm feeling well. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. Some people don't take it so seriously.
Well,
but yeah. Well, I always start the show with the same question, and that is, who are you reading, or what?
Yes,
what are you reading?
I've heard your podcast. So I actually brought a cover of what I'm reading. So this is really a cool book.
Thinking is harming your health.
Is harming your health.
Wow.
So it's Dr. Sarah Hallberg, and she had a pretty famous TEDx lecture, but she started kind of the wave of how low-carb, high-fat diets were actually reducing diabetes, and it was kind of her last book that was written after she passed away from cancer. But it is it's just such a great book. It's wonderful. So that's the last book. The last audio book, though, that I just finished, which was but a completely different genre, was Geddy Lee's My Effin' Life, which just chronicled everything about Rush, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. Wow. No, love Rush. Had a cousin who was bass player and totally enamored with Geddy Lee. We might get into an argument now about who the greatest bass player is, because I would have to go with Les Claypool.
Yeah, for me, it might be Daryl the Munch Jones. He played with Sting quite a bit in the '80s, and that's some amazing bass, slap bass.
Yeah. I like the slap bass. There's something about that. But yeah.
It was really cool. And I'm from Columbus, so it's interesting the story of how influential Cleveland was in breaking them into America. So it was a fun read.
Okay. Yeah. No, it sounds like it. I'd be interested to hear about the story. I'm interested in musicians and music. My musical skills are not great, but I do play a little piano and a little clarinet, little harmonica. But yeah, I have several friends who are professional musicians, and I like hearing about music. There's a couple of shows I've watched and on YouTube, and about musicians explaining how a musician did something amazing, like like Prince's solo on "While My Guitar Gently Weeps" during the induction. That is, he was such an incredible guitar player, and I don't think he got enough credit for it, because I have never seen him make a list of the greatest guitar players. But
that was an absolutely mind-bending solo.
Yeah, absolutely. And he always just seemed to be having so much fun doing it.
That's true.
His performance at the Super Bowl halftime show in the
When it was
rain in
raining.
high heels.
Yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He was a
One of the
trooper.
best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And then of course one of the great guitar songs of all time, "10 Years Gone" by Led Zeppelin. Um,
Yeah.
Jimmy Page's work on that is just amazing. And then one of the great living guitar. Well, Jimmy Page, of course, is still among us, but another one of the great living
Yeah.
guitarists, Brian May, another doctor.
Yeah. Yes.
Dr. Brian May. Um, yeah, with all of his work. His is interesting because he plays in breaths. It's most
Huh.
people don't
What?
realize this, but it's as though the way he plays his guitar is as though it's breathing. And
Wow.
so
I've never heard that.
it'll come, yeah, it'll kind of come in like it's singing.
Interesting.
And if you listen, there's a pattern, and if you miss it, then you can't understand what he's doing. But yeah, yeah, it's I mean I'm a guitar nut, but I don't
Yes.
play at
Yeah.
all.
I play a bit. As I tell everyone, I'm a consistently below average guitarist, but
There you go.
I do enjoy playing. I'll tell you one great documentary that I saw, and you may have already seen it, but a band called Death. If you have a chance, it's the finest documentary I've ever seen in music. But it's about these three African American guys during the heart of Motown in the early '70s, and it's punk before the
Okay.
Ramones, and it's
Wow.
this is anthemic music, and the whole story behind it is just intense.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil
Yeah.
it for you, but man, it's a great documentary, and it's just
Okay.
magical.
Okay. I'll have to watch. I'll have to
Music
look that up.
recommendations, right?
There we go. There we go.
Yeah. Well, I nod.
But
I nod to music. Right there is my Devo Dome. So
oh, okay.
yes, it
I
sits in
couldn't
my
quite
office.
see it. I can see it, but I can't quite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's your
So
energy
yes, I'm
dome.
a product of the '80s.
Yeah, as am I. More a little into the '90s, but yeah, some great music out there, and
For sure.
definitely recommend it. I've been on an Aerosmith trip lately. Um,
Oh yeah, that's a good trip to go down.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's always fun to harass the YouTube algorithm when it comes to listening to music. For a while there, it thought I wanted to listen to nothing but Weird Al, and so no matter what music I started with, it would always within like 5 or 6 songs go to Weird Al, which isn't
There you
entirely
go.
untrue because
Yeah.
I'm a huge Weird Al nut, but
Yeah.
but still, you think, okay, if I choose Incubus, why am I wanting to listen to Weird Al? There's no connection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Gotta love
yeah.
that algorithm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, gotta. So
That's great.
you are a mental health practitioner,
That's right. I'm a psychiatrist.
a doctor of psychiatry.
That's correct. Yes.
So how'd you get into that?
You're well.
What
It's
started you
I,
on the path?
no, it's a great question. I had gone through medical school and was a bit frustrated because there was nothing really that I totally liked. My father, rest his soul, was a radiologist, so I thought, well, what he did was pretty cool. Maybe I'll do that, and I matched in radiology. Did a year of that, and it was a tough year because I really didn't like it. But it was also a great year because it kind of got me away from all the noise, and I realized this is kind of what I liked was mental health. So after doing a year of that, I just reached out to some programs to see if I could, get into a psychiatry program. And luckily, where I trained here at OSU for medical school, there was an opening. So I did my residency, and then once I finished up, went into practice. So it was really just kind of I've always been interested, as I look back and reflected, in kind of psychology and mental health. And it just took a little bit of time for me to kind of realize that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, what is it? What is it mostly that you like about psychiatry and mental
Yeah.
health in general? What is?
Yeah, I find it incredibly interesting in terms of how the mind can really impact not just our emotions and our thinking, but how it impacts us physically. And that's one of my areas of interest, is kind of in this overlap between how our emotions overlap with physical symptoms, particularly chronic pain. So where that mind-body connection is a really special area of interest of mine. But I also like the fact that it's so important, yet people are so worried about the stigma behind mental health and what it means necessarily to come and see someone like me. And it's always been a mission of mine that if you're coming in, for me, it's important for you to realize I'm just a regular person, right? What maybe you thought a psychiatrist would be, maybe from back during the time of Freud and psychoanalysis and all of that, is not really what we do now. And just try to keep a very human relationship with those that I'm privileged to treat. My particular area of interest in therapy is the existential approach, and that's a really equal level type of therapy where it's not me on high dictating down to you what I think your problems are, but some of the things that would affect you are the same things that affect me. And I'd like just being able for people to just kind of walk away and say, whoa, that's not what I thought this was going to be, and hopefully just feel more engaged and breaking down some of those walls of the stigma that unfortunately prevents so many people today from getting help.
Yeah, no kidding. There's in my case, it wasn't so much the stigma, although we in my family we just don't talk about mental health in general. Not
Yeah,
so much, except with my aunt and uncle. There's a stigma there from their church, unfortunately. But I didn't know that that depression wasn't normal for everybody. It wasn't,
yeah,
and I had this feeling that's like, well, okay, this is how people feel, and I had no idea that it wasn't. And so I deal with major depression and ADD, and I've gotten to the point where I'm under control. I have
yeah.
a great psychiatric nurse practitioner and all that good stuff. It's hard to find therapy though out here. Um, they're all overbooked.
Yeah,
But
that can be a challenge. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
case here too.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
yeah. But so I get my time. Thankfully, my school actually, Regent University, actually has a what is it? Timely Care, I think, is a service they subscribe to for us. So if we need a little therapy, we can get it. Just not it's
that's
just not
great.
on a regular basis. But yeah. Yeah, actually, a friend of mine who's since passed away, she helped me figure out that I needed to see somebody, and yeah, finding the right person wasn't easy, but I was able to do it, and um, yeah, that's the next hardest part is finding the right match with your professional, because not everybody's great.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. And it's still, at least when you're looking at it from the point of medical school and residency, it's still not a specialty where a lot of people are going into it. So it kind of creates its own kind of deficit there for practitioners. And that's where I think NPs have done such an amazing job in filling that gap in the psychiatric space, which we just desperately need, because so many people need help. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Let's see. So you mentioned the existentialist approach. What exactly is that? Let's go into a little detail.
yeah. Just the basics of it. It's the whole thing there is some of the major forces that affect us, right, fall down to these ultimate concerns of our existence, and it's something that we all face throughout our lives. Big four pillars are going to be our mortality, the fact that we're always kind of reconciling whether we realize it or not day to day about even though we're living, we're approaching our eventual demise, and that creates its own kind of conflict. The idea of existential meaning, what is the purpose of everything that we're doing, why are we here, against the possibility that there absolutely may be no meaning at all. We are just here, right? So how do we wrestle with that as thinking, beings? The idea of existential isolation, which really comes out when I treat a lot of these pain patients that I see, where, no matter how close we are to someone, no matter how close our relationships are, those that we love, those that love us, there's always that gap of our world, right? And then everyone else. And you feel that a lot more when you are either physically or emotionally hurting, because you pull in and it feels like everyone else is out there and you're in this bubble. And it's this kind of struggle between wanting to connect, but also realizing that there is this gap that will always be there. And then finally, this existential feeling of freedom, right? That we ultimately do have the ability to choose anything we want, but in that it leaves us groundless because there are unlimited decisions, right? So it's how do we choose what we do choose when we have endless choices? And I love anytime I can quote Devo, I will do that. And they had a beautiful quote saying, freedom of choice is what you've got. Freedom from choice is what you want. And I think that kind of clips at that existential kind of button there, where it's like, yeah, I know there's 100 channels that I can choose from, but I think I'm just going to check what's on NBC, right? We go to default because it's just overwhelming. So as these forces kind of play on us and affect us, given the circumstances that we come across in our lives, it can affect us in a positive way, but it can also affect us with anxiety and depression. But the reason I liked it the most, beyond my mind kind of going that way, that made a lot of sense to me, was that it's a real egalitarian type of therapy where, if you're coming into me and we talk about these issues, they're the same ones that are affecting me, just in a different way. So it's very equal in terms of that. And that spoke to me a lot, because I never liked that wall that might be there that also leaves itself open to stigma as well, right? And so that's kind of where I've adapted my practice. Fortunately, I don't do just med management. I'm thankful in the way that we've set up our practice that I can do some therapy as well. So it allows me to pursue that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you say pain management?
Yeah. Well, it's there's a group of us, and it's we're part of a group called the Psychophysiologic Disorders Association. But and I'll say at the start, both in terms of mental health as well as pain. I'm not just a professional. I'm also a patient, right? So I as well suffer with depression, but have also struggled with really bad chronic pain. So I kind of came to this because of my own personal journey, where I had some just chronic, unremitting back pain, and had a bunch of tests done and some interventions done. Fortunately, never surgery, but came across some of this mind-body work when I was trying to figure this pain out myself. And in going through that back then, it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, particularly the work of one individual, John Sarno, who talked about this mind-body approach, the fact that our emotions, particularly anger, when we suppress it, physical symptoms come as a result of being a necessary, almost survival-based distraction away from these deeper emotional issues that feel terror-filled. So it's not neurotic pain or hypochondriacal pain. It's actual real pain. But the purpose of it is functional, It means there's a reason for it, and it is likely survival based because this deeper emotion feels very threatening. So over the years, this group took some of the teachings from Dr. Sarno, and he's since passed away. But he came to fame because he was in New York and cured Howard Stern of his back pain. So Stern always had him on his show whenever he had a chance, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go and spend some time with Dr. Sarno in his New York office and see patients with him. But that's when individuals come in and either they've done a bunch of tests and nothing is showing up as to why they're hurting, or they've done the tests and the imaging or the testing doesn't explain why they should be in so much pain. We kind of try to explore the emotional parts of that. A lot of times you'll see people get a lot better as we're able to kind of decouple that emotion from the physical.
That's interesting because I too suffer from chronic pain. I've had the back surgery, and that's pretty much done up. I got another fortunate match with a great surgeon, and he fixed up my back, and then like a few weeks later decided to stop taking my insurance. So so I got in and got the surgery, and then that was it. And now my main source of pain is my knees.
Okay.
But I can appreciate how pain affects one's mood and mental health. It can be quite frustrating.
Yeah, it's an interesting. It works both ways. I'm not trying to say that all pain and all physical issues are all mind-based, right? Because we talk about this in our groups. I'm like, we can see, and there have been so many studies that have looked at people. Now, this is in the thousands, whether you look at neck pain, back pain, shoulder issues, hip issues, that they've looked now at thousands of individuals, the vast majority of which show positive findings on MRI or CAT scan, yet all of them are asymptomatic, have no pain. So it's the question here is then what exactly is going on here, right? That doesn't necessarily prove what I'm thinking is true, but it also shows that sometimes imaging isn't necessarily going to tell you this, because how can you reconcile the fact that all these people that are in these studies are just coming in to get imaged, not because they hurt? And in anywhere from 30 to 90% of these individuals, you can find diagnosable pathology where you might intervene with surgery, right? So I think the more we learn, almost the less we know about pain. And certainly for me, it makes sense that why not involve mental health or someone like myself earlier first. And if we do get yield, could we save someone from a surgery or other intervention?
Now I saw that you've launched a website. Was it the healthymind.com?
Yeah, the Healthy Mind. It's still in. I'm still getting that up. So it's our main website, is Central Ohio Behavioral Medicine. But hoping to do that. I told you in the pre-show it was a podcast and website that I had done early on back in 2012, 13. But then we had one, then two, then three kids, and it got a little bit hard to juggle everything. So now that they've gotten a bit older, I'm hoping to bring that back online again, and just some basic in terms of mental health, and talking about maybe some of my experiences and maybe this mind-body pain discussion.
Right. No, that'd be great. Definitely a place for that, and a space for that in the continuum of podcasts.
Yeah.
Okay. Any idea when that is going to launch then, or because you said we're
looking
March.
Probably to we're looking probably here towards the probably the fall of this year. Okay. So in the process now of getting the website designed and going from there. So a little bit behind what we thought, but some personal issues over the year had prevented me from really moving forward as quickly as I would have liked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's great. I wish you all the best with it. Trying to think of what else to talk about then. Uh, um, let's see. We've talked about music. We talked about
Yes.
your energy dome. um, yeah, gosh, yeah. We've I've run out of questions. Um,
Oh
well,
gosh. All right.
what else? What else did you want to bring to the table and talk about?
Well, I think it's just basic, issues about mental health and awareness.
Mhm.
Obviously, someone like yourself who's been through it knows, what that's all like. And I think everything that we can do, whether it's someone myself as a professional or even as a patient or not, just to let people know that it's okay to talk about these things. Um, Nothing bad is going to happen to you. The way I approach at least my treatments with anyone who comes in when we're talking about medications and treatment is just the only thing that makes sense to me of how to understand it is if these meds are going to work, they lower the noise. That's the key. The noise of anxiety, the noise of depression, maybe ADD or bipolar. What we're trying to do is go from here to here. Because when that noise is too high, the suffering is too high, it begins to fool people into thinking that they're not as strong as they really are. So, if we can lower the noise, the individual is the person who succeeds, right? It's not because I gave you the medication. I gave you the medication and quieted things down, but your strength, your coping, your ability to rise above this, you can recognize now and take that further. And that's an important message for me when I sit in these sessions, given the stigma that is there. People have this idea of what it means to be on medication or what that might do to them, that it'll change them. And it's a real fascinating thing when I tell them, I'll have people, and it should be to a person, right? When you're feeling better, and maybe you can relate to this, Bill, given that you've been treated. It's like I started to feel like myself again. And I've had people tell me that who have been chronically depressed or anxious who've never had that feeling, but yet it becomes familiar to them when they're feeling better. That this feels like me, and that's the goal with treatment, and really for people not to get too hung up on what it means to be on these medications, and also you have the ability to stop them at any point for whatever reason. And that's what I tell every one of the people that I treat. Just call me, let me know it's happening, but I don't care what the reason is. If you don't feel comfortable, I don't want you on it because I wouldn't stay on it if I felt uncomfortable. So that's kind of the way that I, try to approach all of this.
What would you say is probably the most common issue people are dealing with these days?
Yeah. I think it's anxiety in general, and depression is there as well. So I think both, but it's this crackle, right, of just anxiety, and it comes from all different directions. So on one level, it could be, the anxiety is part of an anxiety disorder that somebody has, but just in terms of the choices that we make, in terms of the type of energy we invite into our lives, whether it be doom scrolling or political or whatever it might be, right? Taking in a lot of these negative influences, not realizing how much that's going to impact us, right? So beyond just the disorder itself, anxiety and depression, what are some of the things that we might be doing that are very clear that we feel is just part of our regular lives and the culture that really could be undermining us? And how can we pull back on this? Right? And it's not necessarily the elimination of all of this, but if you're spending a lot of time online, could you see if you feel better by pulling some time away? Could you see if you feel better if you integrate some form of exercise in your life? Can we cut some of the carbs in your life, increase protein, increase fats, and do you notice some difference? Because it's all a continuum. It's not just, I don't have the magic answer with a pill. And anyone would be foolish to think that that's just it. So when we look at it, kind of looking at it holistically and trying to bring down that noise. But I would say of all of the things, it's probably anxiety that people struggle with the most, and it manifests in different ways. It could be insomnia, it could be obsessive kind of thoughts. They could be medicating with alcohol and other drugs to try and mitigate that. Could be bad relationships or what have you. Just trying to tease it all apart.
Yeah, I refer to her as my dearest of dear friends, Leah. She had crippling panic attacks, and would occasionally call me in the middle of the night, and we'd hop in her car, drive down to the ocean. She'd be taking her lorazepam, and we'd
Yep.
just sit there and drive back and forth, listening to the ocean and the rhythm of the car, and just trying to get her panic under control. Um, but yeah, there was more than one time we had to go to ER because it would be so bad. Yeah, just yeah, anxiety's terrible. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've had little bits of it, but the insomnia and whatnot. But yeah, yeah, that can be crippling.
Yeah, it's really tough, especially panic, because it is so overwhelming and it feels like this incredible amount of doom and there's no way to escape it. If you look at some of the, maybe not as intense type of anxieties, generalized anxiety or other just regular anxiety that you have, another thing that I tell people is, as they hesitate maybe sometimes to do treatment or not, or people who aren't even, necessarily or thinking about it but still have their stigmas. It's one thing to get treatment for your emotions, right, to improve your quality of life because you're, say, less depressed or you're less anxious, right? But there's a physical cost here as well. And this is where the most convincing data is, where we've followed tens of thousands of people across decades, right? Where we've seen in those people who are undertreated or untreated from these emotional disorders, the exponential increase later in life of heart disease, of stroke, of diabetes, of obesity, of cancer. Everyone says, why? Why is this happening? Well, it's anxiety itself, we've inherited and it's evolved down from our ancestors from 100, 200,000 years ago, right? Where it was critical. If you're anxious and you see something moving in the bush and jump and there's nothing there, the only thing you've wasted are calories, right?
Right.
But if you jump, if you see something moving and there's nothing, or you don't do anything because you're aloof, you're dinner, right? So even though it might cost you anxiety, you were able to pass your genes down, and we get those genes passed down to us over the millennia, right? So there is that tendency for anxiety. In the anxiety response, though, in that all or none, the body will do a very predictable change in the makeup of what's going on biochemically. And most importantly, you increase cortisol, you increase all these inflammatory mediators. And I say, well, why inflammation increase? Well, if you're jumping for your life and you might have to face a predator, it makes sense that everything that's inflammatory that heals your wound in case you get cut be in your bloodstream in the moment, right? Because if you get cut, there's just a greater chance that wound may heal if your body's just a little bit inflamed and ready to heal. But we fast forward a few 100,000 years, and we have very little, life or death. But the body doesn't know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a late mortgage payment. Something shaking in the bush and a divorce. So this chronic elevation of inflammation by undertreating these conditions leads 30, 40 years from now to these consequences that happen. So beyond just the stigma behind emotional illness and what it means to go and take care of emotions, there are also very huge impacts that are no longer speculation that will cut short people's lives who suffer with these illnesses and don't get them treated. Yeah.
Getting treatment is definitely important. But it's funny that you mentioned about where anxiety comes from and the benefits it might have had. At some point, I found it to be kind of true of depression as well. When things are working right, it becomes like a superpower where I can hyper focus on a project and
Yeah.
rework and rework the problem over and over again in my head. And but when it's wrong, then it's rumination and unending focus on something bad. So yeah, so it can definitely, when it's under control, it can definitely be like a superpower. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and
No, it's interesting you say that because to me, it's always interesting to consider, well, what are the evolutionary, what's
mhm.
the evolutionary basis for depression? And it's interesting you said it in that way because one of the thoughts, and I don't know how you ever prove this, but I think that's also been the case for me with my depression, is maybe one of the functions of depression is not the depressive moment, but once you get out of it, the appreciation that you have for your health provides a different level of satisfaction and peace to your life, almost like it's a post-traumatic growth kind of thing. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that really rang true for me as I struggled because it was pretty bad, incapacitating depression that I've had over the years. And there is a different level of peace having come through it that I didn't have before even having it. So, but there's a lot that's been written on depression as an adaptive uh, uh, stance, even going back to those early ages, in that if you are um, infected, right, or have a wound or something like that, when we're sick, we look a lot like depression in those first few days. We don't want anyone to bother us. We just want to be alone. We don't want to do anything. And the thinking there is that you conserve a bunch of energy. You keep those calories for healing. And in the case of infection, well, if you were in the tribe, the last thing you wanted to do was be around people and infect the tribe. So it might have been the people that kind of pulled away like that were able to survive a bit longer. And I think that that's probably the biggest basis for like seasonal affective disorder. Maybe some time in the future with how we have technology for genetics, we'll find out that people who struggle with that probably had ancestors that lived at very high or very low latitudes, so that when it got to the winter, you could not afford to go out into the wild. There's no calories out there, and the elements will kill you. But the last thing you want to do when you're sitting in the cave is feel bored. So maybe those folks that were a little bit more predisposed to kind of a depressive stance just didn't feel like doing anything. And even though they didn't feel like doing anything, they saved calories, they didn't go out, they lived, they passed their genes on, right? And right now, here, again, it's not life or death, but there's a good amount of the population that suffers from these seasonal features, and the treatment there is light therapy, and they feel a ton better. You fool the brain into thinking that it is not winter, so your body doesn't begin to hibernate.
Yeah, I can. That totally makes sense as an explanation.
Yeah.
I'd love to see some studies on that. That yeah,
Yeah.
figure out some numbers. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know how you go about proving that, but it's an interesting thing to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. But it does make a lot of sense though. Um,
Yeah.
but well, um, always want to leave them wanting more. So we'll go ahead and stop now. But it's
Okay.
been an interesting talk. Um, the what is it, the website, which will probably be coming up in the fall, is thehealthymind.com. So stay tuned for that. And are there any other links or things you'd like to
Yeah.
promote?
Yeah, I would just say, if people are interested, I run a blog at our practices website. It's centralohiobehavioralmedicine.com. And also, if you are on LinkedIn, you can just you can look me up. You can just put in LinkedIn Peter Zaf, Peterzaf, and it'll go to all my posts. I try to put up articles 3 to 4 times a week, and then also keep the blog updated. So if there's any interest about any of these things, please check me out there.
I will put the links in the description so people will have an easier time of finding you and everything. Um, of course, like I said, that mental health is definitely a topic near and dear to our hearts here, and
Yep.
actually have put the 988 description in the ending credits, so it gets a spot every time. So yeah,
That's great.
if you need mental health help, definitely call 988 and get the help you need, because there are professionals out there who are just waiting to help you. Um, and
Yep.
yeah,
It's very true. You are not
being in
alone.
pain is not normal. Um, so, but
It's very true.
yep. Let's see. Well, do you have before we close? Do you have any final words for the nice people?
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I really appreciated it. And I guess the most important thing for people is you are not alone. If you are struggling, if you are in pain, reach out. The reaching out is much less painful than what you perceive, and it will be infinitely better than what you're struggling with right now. Don't hesitate to reach out. You are not alone. You have no idea how many people are struggling.
Yeah. Everybody's got something.
Yep.
So, all right then. Well, thank you again for being on the show and putting up with me. And everybody, be safe out there. Remember to wash your hands and stay tuned for the ending credits. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been a presentation of Bald Spots Productions. I'd like to thank our producer, my beloved mother, Eileen Hatch. I'd especially like to thank our associate producer, Paul Hernandez III, for his contribution to the shows this month. Follow his financial channel, HDZ Financial, on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram to stay on top of the latest financial news and improve your financial literacy. I, of course, am your humble host. I'd also like to thank my special guest, Peter Zafirides. Support the show if you feel so led over on patreon.com. We're known as Bald Spots Pro. Don't you dare miss YWL Online. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts are offered. Be sure to tune in next time when my special guests will be Rosalind Sadaka. Rosalind is a divorce and parenting coach who puts children before divorce craziness. And J. Webb Benjamin. JB is a tech maverick who puts his children first. He's developed the first post-quantum encrypted messenger, Vox Messenger, among many other accomplishments. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Subscribe, follow, whatever it is you've got to do to kick that algorithm into gear and help us reach more people. If you or someone you know needs support now, call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. That is the suicide and crisis lifeline here in the United States.